and welcome to this special bonus episode of the Story Nerd Podcast. My name is Valerie Francis. I'm an author and a story editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how to craft a book so good that it hooks a reader on page one and never lets them go.
And I'm Melanie Hill, editor, poet, and author of middle grade novel Jet Keeper, and I help writers identify and solve their story problems.
And I am Kathleen Fox. I'm a literary agent with the Rights Factory in Toronto and an editor at Fox Editorial.
All right, this is a first, everybody. For the very first time, all three of us have managed to coordinate time zones and schedules, and we're all here in one episode together. And there's a really good reason for it. Today, we are talking AI, our favorite topic, and the impact it's having on creative writing and publishing. Now, I mean, obviously, this is a huge topic, right? And there's a lot of different things we could talk about, a lot of different angles we could take. So I won't be hugely surprised if this bonus episode ends up being a two-parter. Okay, ladies, it was, honestly, it was hard for me to know where to start with this one. So I decided to start off with something that I find personally interesting, right? The topic here for me that fascinates me all the time is about our ability to recognize good writing from bad. So here's what I'm wondering. Has there been a failure or maybe just a breakdown in our critical skills in this area? So there was a Commonwealth Short Story Prize recently where it was unclear whether the winning piece was written by a real person or whether it was generated by AI. There was another article recently in The Atlantic that's talking about a quote-unquote post-literate age. And today I was reading an article from the New York Times, and it was written by one of their journalists who discovered that there was an AI-generated biography of her that clearly she had nothing to do with. So in that New York Times article, it actually said that there's a blind test that they had people do, and the people being tested couldn't tell the difference between human written text and AI-generated text. But at the same time, the article mentioned the people on Amazon who were leaving reviews of AI-generated books. And, those people could clearly tell the difference between the AI slop and a real book written by real people. And the reviewers were not happy about getting duped and inadvertently buying an AI generated book. So, Melanie, why don't you start us off? Do you think that we are losing critical skills in this area?
I think a little bit, yes, but I don't think that should be surprising in any way. I think the rise or the emphasis that's been placed on learning STEM subjects and dismissing humanities has probably been contributing to this for a long time. That's not to say that STEM subjects aren't important. They're very important. But I think that if you combined or valued humanities and arts and creative industries as much and combine them in with STEM, so you get STEAM, you will get a lot better outcome. And because what we're really trying to do is solve problems, and solving problems is a creative industry and a creative process. So I don't think that this recent commentary about losing critical thinking skills is just solely because of the rise of artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence. I think this is a long time coming, and the tech industries and businesses that are now generating this are probably at the pinnacle of anti-humanities. So it's sort of not surprising. It's been going this way for a long time. I would also say, though, I get quite frustrated with commentary about this is an AI-generated text, and that people can and can't tell the difference, or that they use tools to see if things are generated. Because I read an interesting article the other day that someone put Mary Shelley's Frankenstein into an AI detector and it came up 100% AI-generated. That's because it was being used to train the tool. And so, it just feels like it's a common sense world to a degree. And as a poet, I write form and I write a lot of things with and without punctuation. I play with words, I play with meanings and metaphors. And when you play at that level, and then you hear other people come in and say things about, well, there wasn't punctuation here, or this metaphor was wrong, or to me, people sound very ignorant of exactly what it is that a writer or a poet is trying to do. And so I get quite frustrated by that because all these things that are indicators of AI generated text are really not indicators at all. I think it just reveals a level of ignorance about punctuation. It reveals an ignorance about playing with words. And I find that quite frustrating. But But this whole argument and this whole conversation we're having, I've been trying for a long time to frame this in a way that makes sense to me. And I'm going to take you back and tell you a bit of a story from a couple of years ago when we were on a family holiday, and we took the kids on like before they, started to leave the home and everything. We went on our one and only overseas holiday, and we went to Europe, and we were in Lyon, and we went to a museum about graphic art. And, this is, I'm probably really going to be devil's advocate in this conversation to some degree, because when we were at this museum, I looked at it had a Gutenberg press in there, and that's from the 15th century, and the explanation of the Gutenberg press says, and I quote, and I took a photo of this, so it's a direct quote from what was on the display, and it says, in the 1450s, research was underway in several European cities to find a system for producing multiple copies of text. In the 15th century, towns were expanding rapidly and universities were developing, as was education in general. Libraries were being established through Europe by princes and in universities. Oral communication was still the norm, but the written word was gaining ground. Technically, everything was in place to exploit the invention of letterpress printing. The new investigation was greeted with a mixture of mistrust, anxiety, and fascination. And despite its potential advantages, some feared that it would lead to the uncontrolled spread of culture and knowledge to the masses, to botched production of humanists' work, and even to the spread of seditious ideas. The religious and secular authorities set about finding ways to control what was published. Now, when I read this, I immediately thought about AI. And when I feel myself getting wrapped up in whether AI is good or bad, I actually go back to this description and then I think about what it means today. Because without the Gutenberg press, we wouldn't be writers and there wouldn't be a publishing industry. And this technology removed jobs, right? Illumination artists, town criers, and oral storytellers lost their jobs, or there was a reduction, I should say. They didn't quite go away, but there was a reduction in the number of people filling those occupations. But it also created new jobs. So now printers evolved, booksellers became popular, graphic artists, journalists. All of these jobs were created because of the invention and the adoption of mass printing. So the thing that I find really interesting in the description and what I think people need to notice and pay attention to is that there was fear when this new technology came into place. And there was the reality in that it was good and bad. And we have been here as humanity before. We have been in this place of fundamentally significant technology coming in to change the way we do things. And, in fact, Valerie, when we recently studied Hidden Figures, Dorothy in that movie was faced with a similar problem. Her role as a computer was being taken by machines, but she chose to learn the machine's language and she mastered it. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from that particular movie and from Dorothy's story in particular. Now, the human machine in that story became the master of the mechanical machine. And I really think that history can be our guide when it comes to thinking about this change and it comes to thinking about, well, what makes us human and what skills do we have that we value? And critical thinking was actually introduced as part of one of the side effects of the Gutenberg press, right? When you have text, when you are recording things and then you teach people how to read and think, that was one of the side effects of mass printing and probably was heralded by the introduction of the Gutenberg press. So I think that there is a lot of thinking still to go. I think there's a lot of fear and a lack of understanding of what this technology can and what it will do and how it can be used for good and bad. Because a machine is just a machine. It's what people do with it and it's how people use it that is actually what we need to be aware of. The technology is just the technology, but in the hands of people, it it then has either a good effect or a bad effect. So there are some of the things that I think about when I think about critical thinking. I think about the evolution of technology and I look back to history to kind of teach us a way to think about things so that we're not scared. Because I think if we get scared of it or we don't like it, um, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I know that was a bit of it was a bit of a wander, a bit of an initial wander of some of my thoughts about AI and critical thinking and how it's going to change us. I think we're just on the precipice of significant change, and I think it's difficult to understand what will be good and what will be bad at this stage. What about either Kathleen, you or Valerie? What do you think?
Kathleen?
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points there because I think especially in the creative industries, we immediately get our backs up because of the way that it has been used. So, like people are some people aren't being honest in using it and some are, the whole ridiculous thing about how they're taking people's books and feeding them into these machines and to train them. And there was no permission, there was no royalties, there was nothing. So that's pretty shady, right? So I think rightfully so, people's backs are up, and this is what we think about all the time. Um, so it's hard. I think it might be harder to see the things that you're bringing up. So I think I think it's great that you brought those things up because yeah, critical thinking and just thinking about the evolution, like how we got to where we are now. It's it is scary and it is new-ish and it is different and I don't think it's going anywhere. So it's being integrated in all areas of life and it's hard to get away from it. So I think it's going to come down to ethical use, you know? I think that's important.
What about the idea that we can we cannot tell the difference between good writing and bad writing? Because in relation to the Commonwealth literary contest, I did read an article and I couldn't find it again to source it for you, but I read an article by someone who worked in the publishing industry who said that they didn't use AI. They didn't know anything about ChatGPT or any of the others, Claude or Gemini. They just didn't use generative AI. And they were kind of on the moral high ground because that was the position that they had taken. Only then to realize that if they hadn't exposed themselves to text generated by these large language models, that they wouldn't know what it was capable of and they wouldn't be able to spot the text when they did see it. So I'm no expert, okay? So I'm kind of thinking out loud here. I keep coming back to our human ability to recognize good writing from bad writing. And is that eroding? I think it is. I don't think it's gone, not by a long shot. I don't think it's gone. Um, you know, and is AI good or bad? Well, I think it's both, depending on the application. Um, there's a lot of news about AI agents, which is a little freaky. I haven't heard it in reference to publishing, however. So we'll park the AI agent issue aside to one side for right now. Hopefully it doesn't rear its ugly head in publishing, but if it does, we can always circle back to this. But I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. If people in the industry, if judges in a literary contest cannot look at, and I keep coming back to the Commonwealth contest, the short story contest. There's several great videos on YouTube where they actually pull up passages from the submission that won, and there are these phrases that sound very highfalutin, very hoity-toity. Except if you stop and you actually read them, they don't mean anything. They're very they're weird. They're not effective metaphors. It's poor writing.
Well,
And I
that's
wonder
an
if in our
interesting
go
thing though,
ahead.
isn't it? Like who judges, so what is poor writing and what's not, and what's experimental and what isn't? Right, because and again, this comes from not understanding what the machine can and can't do. So the machine, it what AI does in a writing context, if you look at it, it averages. So they are tools that actually bring in and make everything average. So they smooth out things. So this idea that they write, yes, so there's illogical things and that they write terrible metaphors, it's generally not what, unless you ask it to do certain things, because it's prompt driven, right? So, but generally the average writing that generative AI produces is just an average blandness. That's what the tools are designed to do. They consolidate all this, what they call data, so text, and they bring it down and average it out because they're probability machines. And so what they're trying to do is be predictive in terms of the word that comes next. So I actually think sometimes that if a metaphor doesn't make sense in the way that you interpret it to make sense, it doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense to the author. And it doesn't make sense that they're trying to do something experimental. So I think we need to be really cognizant and think about what we think good writing is, because if we constantly go down this path of thinking that, then people aren't going to experiment. And that's what art is. You need to experiment. And there will be people who experiment more, and sometimes it will land and sometimes it won't. And if you've ever read any of the Booker Prize winners, that you could say exactly the same thing about a lot of that text. There
Well,
are books out there that do not, when you're sticking thesaurus meanings in the middle of text, right? So someone has deemed that to be good writing. Does it make it good reading? I don't know, but it's not my cup of tea. So I think we need to these are good debates to have, and this is where critical thinking becomes important. But on the Commonwealth Prize question, they actually went and asked all of the shortlisted authors to provide evidence that they haven't used artificial intelligence. So they've had to provide drafts, 8 or 9 copies of various drafts. And I think this is where we fall into dangerous territory of people doing things like social media posts about pulling up some other author's text and going through it and using that as evidence of generative AI usage. That just makes me really angry when people do that. I just think, for the grace of God, there go I. It's just, are we really going to go down that path? The onus is on the author to prove that they haven't, and to verify that they haven't used it. And just because someone else doesn't think that it's good writing doesn't mean that it's AI generated. So I think this is really a murky pond. And I think, when it comes to the ethics of things, like Kathleen said, to go and accuse someone of using generative AI because it doesn't meet what you think is good writing or what I think is good writing is a really slippery slope to go down.
I cannot wait to read the comments on this episode. All right.
Well, it's funny because I saw a social media post yesterday where this woman stood up and she was pulled apart another author's text, and the thing that she said is, the character liked an orange, and then she found an example of another author who had written their book 20 years beforehand saying that their character used an orange, and suddenly this is evidence of artificially generated text. I mean, this is absurdity, and this is where critical thinking skills really come into play. You need to be able to think about whether or not someone is telling what someone else is saying, and whether or not that's actually a logical thing to do and to draw that conclusion. So did you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on something you said, but it's for Kathleen. Kathleen, you might not have an answer for this. Do you think, is it happening now, or do you think it might happen where a writer in the traditional publishing world will be required to prove that they wrote the novel before a traditional publishing house will accept it?
That is a good question. I mean, I can see how it might be heading in that direction because, there's a lot of accusations that float around, like Melanie was getting at. And yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see where that is going to go in the industry because, you know, eh, yeah, I don't have an answer right now, but it is being talked about in various places. So it could be, um, it could be coming.
Okay, so note to self, keep all your drafts of everything. Uh, don't just copy over your file.
Don't we all though have files and files
timestamp
and
it.
files of like
Well,
final
I'm
draft,
just thinking
final draft?
well, I'm just thinking of Scrivener because I write in Scrivener.
Yes.
And when I do backups, they're all separate backups with a timestamp, with a date on them. So after every writing, and I don't know if I just have it set up that way or if I don't know if that's the default setting. I have no idea. I can't remember. So if I look at my last book, Immortal, there's like a whole bunch of backup copies of it. So I can show for each one where I went, and then there's the screenshot view and everything. Um, uh, so there's a zillion copies of a thing in text version. Um, but not every, like if you wrote it by hand, keep all your notebooks, keep everything, keep everything, keep everything. So, so the Department of Redundancy department, keep everything, multiple copies. All right. Okay. Let's move to topic number 2 because we're nearly a half an hour in and we're on the second topic. Oh, all right.
Melanie's on a rant. That's what we subtitle at Melanie's rant.
It's first thing in the morning for Melanie. It's in the evening for me and Kathleen. So Melanie's had her Java juice and she's ready to go. And Kathleen and I are fading in the summer heat. And Melanie's just getting stoked up in the cool winter air in Australia. Okay. um, all right. So we talked about writers using or not using AI in the creation of their novels. However, we're seeing AI being used by other players in our industry as well. For example, HarperCollins is using, or at least was in 2024, 11 Labs for some of their backlist audiobooks. And there's new software called Manuscript AI. It's created by a company called Trilogy. And that's designed to help agents and publishers as well sift through their slush piles. And listen, Kathleen, you and I have talked about this offline, maybe online too. I can't remember. But in terms of agencying, I could never be an agent. I mean, I would love working with writers. I would love negotiating the publishing deals, but that query inbox would break me, I think. so so I understand the temptation to have a tool to help you sift through it because it's a lot of queries. So, Kathleen, my question, and I'm going to start with you, is what are you hearing or maybe not hearing in your agenting circles about agencies, literary agencies using maybe Manuscript AI or something else, or the publishing houses that you submit to, maybe them using your submission and all the other agents' submissions to go through them. What's the rumbling? Anything?
I hear a lot of rumbling in writing circles. I don't personally know any agents who use such a tool. I don't personally know any editors that use such a tool. I know there is talk about it. Um, but I don't know. It feels so icky to me. Like I love what I do, and I could never trust a machine to tell me what I'm going to like and what I'm not going to like. And so if I was to do that, I would feel like I'm missing out on something because it makes mistakes. We see it all the time. People talk about it all the time. It makes mistakes. And I could never do that because I don't want to miss something, and I wouldn't want to be, like we're expecting authors not to use generative AI and then submit it as their own work. So why then would I use AI to determine whether or not their book is good, right? Like it just doesn't make sense. Um, and like you said, I get the temptation to want to reduce the amount of time queries takes. You hear agents talk about it all the time. Like my inbox is overflowing and it's hard to get a handle on it and to stay on top of it. But I could never do that. That's just me. And again, like these are my opinions and my experiences, but and I can't speak directly for other agents, but like it just wouldn't make sense to do something like that. I would feel like that's an unethical use of AI. Um, and like Melanie was saying, there are pros and cons. There's good things and bad things, and it can ease the workload for other things. But I don't feel it has any place in the creation of somebody's art. Um, and that goes from my side as well. Um, like on this side of things, I it would be unbalanced, I think, if we were using AI to sift through queries and expecting them to not use AI to generate their queries or their submissions, right? Like we hear that all the time too. And we see it in inboxes. We can tell when a query has been generated by AI. It's and again, like I mean, it is it, you are kind of towing the line of being accusatory because what if you're not right? What if they didn't use AI to write it and that's just the way that it's come out? But if it feels, like I very much am a vibe person. I'm an instincts person and I trust my instincts. Um so if it feels like it's been generated by AI, then that says something to me. So yeah, I don't want to work with authors that use AI, so I would expect that they wouldn't want to work with an agent that uses AI.
Something you just said there caught my attention. You said you wouldn't want to trust AI to know, I can't remember the exact quote, to know your subjective tastes. And I
Mhm.
think that's the crux of it all. This is art, which is by its nature subjective. And I mean, one of the reasons Melanie and I keep banging on about story theory all the time is because it allows us to approach something which is, by definition, subjective with a degree of objectivity. Now, even then, there are times when we watch movies and we're like, I don't know, I didn't really enjoy that. And but that is totally a subjective opinion or something that we can objectively say, this is a terrible movie from a structural point of view, but oh my God, we love it. Right? So AI doesn't have literary taste, not the way an agent would. And
Right,
so,
exactly.
as a writer, we could write a book that's awesome and we could send it out to 100 different agents. And for 50 of them, they're like, I don't get it. It's not to my taste. Doesn't mean it's not a great book, but it's not to my taste, which means it's not a great agent author match. And then in the other 50, you're going to get a couple in there for sure who say, this is interesting. This is different. I like the way this person writes. I like the voice. There's a lot of talk about voice and I mean, it's almost to me a bit of a running joke now when I read agent websites. Sorry, Kathleen. When I read agent websites and in their manuscript wish list, what they're looking for is a voicey narrative. I'm like, well, WTF? What? Tell me what you mean by a voicey narrative. No offense, Kathleen. I'm sorry. But there's a lot of talk about voice. AI, if you're using AI to sift through your queries, or if an editor at a publishing house is using it to sift through their manuscripts, I just don't think it's gonna pick that up. I could be wrong. What do you think, Melanie?
Absolutely agree with you. And, picking up again on what Kathleen said and knowing how the machine works is it's going to tend to the average. So if you get, and it's going to recommend things that there's a lot of, especially if it's successful. So the ability of an agent to, if they're using some sort of artificial intelligence tool, to identify something different, something unique, it's not going to be able to do that because it works on data that already exists. And when you get more of something, it again tends to the average. So, what it will recommend is more of the same, and it will stop agents from probably finding or discovering, if they were using these tools, that difference, that like that voice or that topic that no one's ever written about in that way before. So it's going to actually stifle new, like, novelty and interesting things, and it will recommend more of the same type of work. So I think that it is, those agents or those industry or those companies who use those tools in that way are actually making their life a lot harder and are probably contributing to something that will eventually be easily replaceable. So when you have something that's formulaic, when you have something that's average, and you keep perpetuating that, then it's easy for the machines to replicate from a writing sense. So using our senses as a human to identify something that speaks to you or that is different is absolutely, I think, a unique selling point. I think agents and agencies and publishers who are who live on that edge of being different and wanting to do different things are probably going to find more success in an AI in an AI world. So I absolutely agree with both of you. I think I don't understand as laborious as it must be. I don't understand why in an artistic and subjective environment that you would want to use something that just really statistically tends to send you to the average. I hope that
Yeah,
makes
we
sense.
don't want average. We want
No.
unique. We want something different. We
Yes,
don't want average.
that's right. But that's what the machines will give you. Do you know, like if that's what people are using them for, that's exactly what will happen. I agree with you. Like if that is the absolute best case of keeping humans involved in that process, it is exactly that. Yeah.
And the beauty is that we are all unique individuals with our own lived experiences and our own perspective on the world. And that is what we bring to our art,
Mm.
right? That is why I love art. All kinds of art. All right. Let's pause there. And we'll bring this episode to a close and we'll pick up with a second bonus episode because I can tell we're not finished talking about this yet. All right, so we'll wrap up this part one bonus episode of the Story Nerd podcast. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. If you want us to review your query letter and first 10 pages writing sample, and I promise it will be us, it will not be AI, go to storynerd.ca for all the details about how to submit. To get your free first 10 pages checklist, visit valeriefrancis.ca/checklist. For more information about Melanie's books, visit melaniehill.au. And to find out more about Kathleen's agent wish list or what services she offers as an editor, visit KathleenFoxAgent.com and FoxEditorial.com. Fox has 2 X's. And by all means, go and subscribe to her Substack at Literary Cats Keynotes. It's a really good one. And that's my unbiased opinion. I swear to God. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.